Okay, so the news today then is an additional extension of research that the journal's been doing on various search subjects, Amazon and Google been included, Facebook to a lesser extent, but they've been reporting and doing real kind of primary research on what happens when you're on Amazon. And the article is Amazon restricts ad buying by rivals, and they're saying that the strategy gives an edge to its own devices and puts other gadget marketers at a disadvantage. But it's more than that. It really happens to people who are not in gadgets, but just competing with them in some way. So basically, it says, Amazon accounts for about 38% of all online sales, and you all know what's happened to online sales in the last 8 months and in the last several years. So 38% market share makes it far and away the largest shopping platform. And it's about half of all online shopping searches. So it's very, very powerful, competing directly with Google and Facebook in a pretty big way.
Well,
They say that they say that let's see, the first page of search results can make or break a seller, with the majority of shoppers buying from the company's first page. This is just like Google. We know that about 87% of all searches end up in the top 10 or so, the top page of Google, and so this is right in line. And so it stands to reason that, and I'm going to guess you're talking 65 maybe percent of all purchases happen because on the first page of results. So unless you're really, really, really specific with brand name, model number, that kind of thing, you're going to end up having Amazon stack the results in a way that prefers their products. And they have, I think, 50 of their own brands now. It's almost impossible to tell which brands are Amazon brands. So if you're just buying like a commodity electronics piece or something that you buy a lot, and there are a lot of them around, what you end up with is an Amazon brand that you can't tell what or who it is. They used to call them basics, and I think that's a little too vanilla. That's too easily identifiable. I recently received something that I thought was a regular brand, and when it came in and I researched it, it turned out it was an Amazon brand. So Amazon spokesman Drew Herdner in a written statement says Walmart refuses to sell Amazon brands like Kindle and Fire, etc., and therefore it's okay for us to do that. But you could argue that Amazon's more powerful than just another retailer. The restrictions Amazon has put in place mean that products sold directly by Roku often do not appear atop search results for Roku's own products. So in other words, if you were to type Roku into Amazon, you'll get other products and not including all of Roku's products necessarily. So it's clearly not an even field. In April, the Journal reported that Amazon's private label employees used data from its third-party merchants to create competing Amazon products. And I think I reported on that before, where they proved that they were using competitive data in order to develop products that would compete specifically with those who are supposedly their customers and their partners. Documents released after July's congressional hearing indicate that Amazon told Apple that it gives its own devices favorable treatment. The document said that Amazon's own products have competing ads removed from searches. So, there's another piece of real evidence that that's actually going on. And Bezos had said, kind of finally, just to sum up, to be clear, my view here is, and this is kind of a separate issue, but my view is that This is buying market position, not technology. And he wrote that December 15th. So what that states, that there are two or three messages there, but the last one really is that Bezos believes that market share is more important than anything else. And so he will buy market share. He's been doing that for many years. And so it's clear that they're continuing on that path forward. We had kind of reported that, and we've discussed that before. And it points that the solution in a paper that John and I wrote, John Burgess and I wrote on Amazon and new distribution channels about 2-3 years ago, prior to most people thinking about this subject, really ties in with kind of where we were going. Our solution was that you have to build a strong brand, because if your brand is Levi, then and you want to buy Levi's, then you should be able to go to Amazon, type in Levi, and get Levi. That seems kind of reasonable, but I have noticed that you don't get that. You may get some Levi's, but you're going to get other brands as well that may have some special tie-in or larger margins and more profit for Amazon. So they're not being honest. Google is doing a lot of the same thing. It's kind of hard to get honest results today. And of course, this has huge implications for the upcoming election. So you have to be very careful about how you vet your information if you get it from Google. I've used DuckDuckGo as my default search engine for about 2 years. And I find that DuckDuckGo gives me 80 or 90% of the time, gives me as good as or better results than Google does. It's only in the really obscure things, when I'm doing, really deep genealogy or very minute historical things, that I'm looking for specific documents that might reside in some library somewhere, that I find that I have to go to Google in order to be able to get really broad and deep results. Other than that, I'm finding that DuckDuckGo is a very good engine. And they claim on the outside that they don't do any data gathering at all. So there's a couple bonuses there. You can get better information. You can, and it's unbiased. And then you also have them not tracking your every single keystroke, which is happening with Google and Facebook. We know that clearly now. We suspected for a decade or more, but clearly that's what's happening in terms of them following us around and putting all this data in huge server forms. So that's kind of where we are in that. Anybody have any comments about Google or search or any of that kind of thing before we kind of move on to John? Okay.
I have one general comment, and that is that I'm not surprised, and I am surprised that you're surprised.
Oh,
but I'm not surprised at all, because this is exactly what Sears and Roebuck did 40 years ago. And we were all witness to it in the Midwest when Sears and Roebuck was selling a lot of sub-manufacturers' products, and slowly they started marketing them under their own name. And at some point, they became such a large percentage of this supplier's product line, they just bought them. And
yeah,
it was Sears and Roebuck. So what they promoted actually ended up being truth.
Yeah, and I know that happened. I have some firsthand knowledge of that. My first partner, who is my grandfather's age, was a retailer back in those days, and he actually watched it happen with one of the people who, and he was in retail, and one of the people who got bought out, where they gave you more and more business, and then once they got up to about 60-70%, they said, you have to lower your prices, or we're just going to take our business to another factory.
Or we could buy you.
or we could buy you, and then they got the profit from both. So yeah, that's true. However, and of course, I'm not really surprised. This is really kind of a support for what we've already gone through. But there is a difference here, and it's a very deceptive difference. And that is that when you got the Sears catalog, you knew you were buying from Sears somehow. Now, you may have been buying a brand name who you thought it was from somebody else. But in this one, I think a lot of people have been lulled into thinking that it's a fair and even marketplace because it's just search. And so if you go onto search and you do a Google shopping search, it gives you its preferred vendors first. And we've known that for 12 years or more. And but I think also that you kind of tend to think that Amazon is just selling other people's stuff, with the exception of some of their own electronic products. But now it's really clear that they're actually putting in preference. And so if you went on a catalog and said, I'd like to have a General Electric stove, they would show you a General Electric stove, and you'd look through all of the others and you'd pick it. But if you go to the stove section, you get the stoves. Well, today, if you go to the stove section, that General Electric stove might not even be on the first page. So there's that sort of nuance there about how the electronic world is really making this whole merchandising thing more deceptive. We're getting back to the old, snake oil salesman, I think, in some ways, and all of the data and the psychological imprinting that is done, and we'll talk a lot more about that in the future, but that whole thing is starting to look a little bit on the old-fashioned snake oil side to me. That's where marketing is going, I'm afraid, with all the data. And so an very interesting subject. So with that, what I want to do is introduce John.Mills. Now,
hey, Ron.
Yes.
Really quick, that reminded me, this is Matt. Sorry, I missed the past couple times. There's been times where I've ordered from like eBay or sometimes the Walmart platform, and I'll get something that's actually fulfilled by Amazon. So I'll order through eBay, but it's fulfilled by Amazon.
Oh, interesting.
It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the sellers are listing their products through eBay, but then it somehow goes to Amazon, and I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting because I try and stay away from Amazon because of their size.
I've been trying to do that too. I find it pretty hard to do because it's so easy. If I need something easy, that's where I'm at. But I am trying to, if I have a little more time, I'm trying to find other possibilities to buy other things from companies. Just out searching around and putting a credit card every time you buy something is a real pain. And I think we all need to search for some different approaches and try and send business around to other folks. Buying directly from the company is a really nice thing. It's if you have a PayPal account, and that makes it a little easier just to use PayPal or maybe Apple Pay. And help the whole transaction go a little bit faster. So, but yeah, that's interesting. I haven't heard that exact thing before. Now, Amazon has 2 or 3 levels of service, and one of them is fulfillment, another one is marketing, and so they'll do whatever it is that you would like to have them do, and their fulfillment, of course, is so much better than almost anybody, that there's an advantage to having them do fulfillment. And by the way, I don't know if any of you have seen the commercials. They are now offering in some cities 2-hour grocery delivery. And so that's been something I'm watching very, very closely for the dairy. So pretty interesting stuff, and continues to be interesting times. So. Okay, well, we want to give plenty of time to John.Mills. I want to introduce him. I have introduced him before, and he's been a kind of a regular part of our group here for the last several times. There may be some things you don't know. John.Mills he's a Kiwi. That means he's from New Zealand, and he immigrated here in the 70s. I'm not sure exactly how he managed to get himself into sort of high tech in those days, but in those days, personal computers were new, but electronics had been around a long, long time. And he managed to get himself into the electronics business on his own with, I guess he had a partner or two, and grew that to a pretty nice, very respectable business over a period of years back in Indiana. And kind of worked on a regional basis with a lot of auto manufacturers that managed to pull him into doing some things in China, a lot of electronic specification in the early days when China was beginning to move into more electronics. And he subsequently sold that business and has been investing in property for many years, and has kind of transitioned his property assets out to California. I don't know if that was a good move in the long run, but both of us did the same thing. And he currently owns the Mills, which is a office complex it's a building that has offices in it. And those offices can be rented, for one person, two persons, 3, 4, up to maybe 5 people, and he provides all of the high-tech stuff, so that you don't have to worry much about where you're going to get your T1 line, how are you going to hook into the internet, where's your server going to be. He takes care of all of that kind of stuff, and actually does some server, I guess, warehousing for a couple of clients. And so he's got a very high-tech building, which he has enjoyed very much building. And during that time, over the last 10 years or so, since he was in business in the Midwest, he's also done some various consulting projects that have, taken him various places, gotten him involved in other companies, etc. And so he has consulting experience. He's got a good, solid business background. And then a couple of, maybe 5 or 6 years ago now, he got a master's degree in, what's your actual degree in, John?
That's from Talbot, so it's a Master's of Psychology and Theology. So
Yeah.
The actual technical title is Spiritual Direction, but it's Theology and Psychology.
Okay, yeah. And so he's a good, strong Christian. He's got a good background in the psychology and ministry, and that brings him to an interest he has in humans, in people, and he's always been involved in doing things for other folks. And he's currently beginning to, as he's gotten his investments kind of in order here, he's currently building a new business with a company called Predictive Index, PI, which is a company that helps determine people's habits and psychology, behavior, those kinds of things, so that you can manage your workforce a lot better. This is really an important area, and I just kind of want to say, just before John gets started, that, and I mentioned this briefly before, it's been absolutely critical to maintain my business over the years, to be involved in some of these kinds of things. You all had an opportunity to do the 16PF, and we had Molly come in and kind of go through that a little bit with you to give you a little taste of what that is. This has some similar attributes, but the reason it's important is because hiring people is one of the most costly things you can do, and it's one of the most costly things you can make, easiest ways to make an expensive mistake, especially when you're small. So the industry numbers are roughly, it costs about a third of somebody's salary to do a hire. Now, that might seem, incorrect if you're hiring waiters and entry level people for factories and that kind of thing. But when you get up to the executive level, I know of folks who spend a third to a half in order to be able to do the assessment, do the search, fly people out from wherever to be able to have that final interview and to get the whole thing done. It's expensive. So when you hire somebody and they don't work out, or they're not doing something that you hoped they'd be able to do, you've really got a mess in your hands, because that's part of the cost, is the cost of incorrect decisions. So making a good decision is really, really important. And so we've been involved in that. I say Red Fusion, with Molly as kind of the lead on that, by necessity, because every company that has had rapid growth has needed management development. Managers are not usually ready without some experience, and and there are a lot of owners who don't have a natural management profile. That's not who they naturally are, and as a result, they end up making a lot of mistakes, which costs even more. The second piece of that is working together as groups is something that is important, and trying to be able to put the right people together, whether it would be partners or trying to get department heads to work together, or to get people to work for a department head. This is a problem, and understanding more about people in a deeper way really helps. And so even if you have some of that natural insight, which some of us do, and in fact, the Millionaire Next Door business people have been successfully partially because they really had a good sense about people and how to hire people and how to find the right people. And so that's, not everybody has that naturally. So this whole genre of management development, of personal development, career development, is something that is really important, when only about a third of all people working like their jobs. So the problem is that somehow they've taken whatever job's out there, they haven't fashioned their lives, they haven't planned it forward, they haven't thought through who they are and what they're going to enjoy doing, and they end up in jobs that they don't enjoy, and so they end up making mistakes. And when you make mistakes, you're under a lot of pressure. A lot of times you snap, and that's what gets you fired. So this is a much bigger deal than it's rated. If you take a look at small business and what are their problems, yes, right now, COVID's number one. Cash flow is right there. We know that. We've talked about these things. But third or fourth is people problems. And hiring people is really, really key. Of course, strangely today, hiring anybody for some businesses is key. And there's actually a labor shortage because what the government has done with compensation. But that's another story, and we'll talk plenty about that in the future. So with that, that's John.Mills, and he has really a lot of good information, and this is a good program. So John, take it away.
All right, I'm going to click right into hopefully you are seeing a slide that says why we are here. Is that correct?
Yep, it's good.
Good. I'm going to show you a couple of slides that we've got here, and then I'm going to, in about 30 or 40 seconds, jump into a very short video that comes from Mike Zaney, who is the CEO of the company that we're working with. And I'll tell you why I'm going to do that. But why we're here? Well, basically, it's because decisions are being made, and they're being made with us or without us. The bottom line is we are either part of the decisions on the back end, or we're part of them on the front end. And sometimes it's not really clear. So how do we make decisions? And I would debate with you here that the real issue is leading through crisis. We're in a bit of a crisis. We each have our own crises in the way that we operate our own businesses and what we're faced with, but also there's the general malaise of the COVID. So why we're here, it's about decision making, and I would propose to you that decisions are made by people, and how do we get to those decisions? So if you'd like, we've got a little booklet that's been put together. It's about adapting, protecting, and emerging, surviving economics. I can get that one to you if you like. It's a PDF version. But in leading through crisis, we're going to talk about pivoting. It's decision-making is nothing more and nothing less than pivoting, but we've got to know where to go. And so one of the metaphors, of course, is on the basketball court, you know, how do you go and work through and get out and move into the new direction? Success, we believe, is depending on the performance of your people. Hopefully we build systems underneath it, but at some point, people are a key importance to do it. And then we can rely and lead your people to execute new priorities. So this is the fundamentals of Predictive Index. And we're going to talk about leadership, operations, and productivity. And in leadership, quite often, the leadership skills that got us into business are not the ones that we need to continuous and caretake that business very effectively. Some of them are, but some of them aren't. And we need to know the difference. So the themes that we've been concentrating on is adapt how you lead, lead with resilience. It's a word that's out there right now. How do we effectively lead in crisis? How do we realign our operations and execute on it? And then to what extent are your people frozen? Is there an element of frozenness? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and click in just one moment to take you off share here. And actually, I would love to do that, except I've lost control of my board. Where did you go? Stop screen sharing. I hate it when that happens. Zoom, yeah, meeting console is gone. Stop screen sharing. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to go and share with you a 3-minute video that coming right up. I'm going to share right now. Tell me if you've got it. Starting.
Hello, I'm Mike Zani, CEO at the Predictive Index.
Do we have sound? Yes, good.
People are the most expensive part of the business, so getting it right is critical. When it comes to creating a talent strategy, many companies cobble together employees without considering team dynamics, and they appoint leaders who might be excellent individual contributors, but who lack the self-awareness or motivation needed to effectively inspire employees. When teams and leaders are designed ad hoc like this, results suffer. But when the design of the organization, its leadership, its team dynamics, and its culture are approached intentionally and strategically, supported by people data, companies have a much better chance of achieving their desired business objectives. The design portion of talent optimization is dedicated to ensuring that your leadership team is aligned on the business strategy and positioned to achieve results.
I'm going to interrupt just for a second. Google Mike Zani, Z-A-N-I, and you'll find that he was the CEO and owner of 2 companies that grew to multi-million status. And then he and his partner, one other person who's very much not like Mike, a different type of individual, they used Predictive Index for their core development. They adopted it and they grew both of these companies. One was in very high tech. It was military vehicles, super equipped for diverse environments. They grew them so fast and so well with teams that at the end of this time, they said, what are we going to do? And he said, well, let's buy the company that helped us grow these companies. So he's speaking from a real core experience here. 2 minutes to go.
You already know this is important, but until now, you haven't had the way to truly check and make sure that everyone in the boat is rowing in the same direction. How does PI's design module work? It all starts with getting alignment on your business strategy. Use the PI strategy assessment to survey your leadership team, to measure alignment on strategy and your collective confidence in achieving your strategy. With results from the survey, you can have extremely meaningful discussions and achieve true alignment on your strategy. Additionally, when your leaders have also completed the behavioral assessment, you'll be able to see where your leadership team's behaviors are well suited or potentially not suited for executing your strategy. The software will share prescriptive actions to help your organization be successful, such as how to address potential behavioral gaps in your leadership and how to design your organizational culture and structure to align with executing your strategy. Roughly 3 out of 10 change initiatives at an organization are highly successful. One initiative will fall flat, and the rest flounder in the middle, achieving some noteworthy success but ultimately missing the mark. Your PI partner is a critical piece of this endeavor. They'll offer guidance and support as you review the results of your survey and set your strategy.
All right, I'm going to stop that share. We're going to jump right back in to where we were because he's the game changer for us. He set up what we're doing. So now you should be back to the same screen I started off with, hopefully. That's good. And I need to just
Talent optimization is an investment in the morale.
Exit this one. You really do need an extra set of hands. Okay. Let me go and we'll work through this. So the invitation is to adapt how you lead, how we lead. You know there's work to be done and there are people to do it. Are they aligned correctly? We've brought people into our companies based on a lot of variables. Mostly it's competency. We bring people in for competency. What we didn't do is check them for their behavior. Now the filter is the job. People who behave well stay, people who don't behave well leave. And just ask most of the people who you know, who you've watched leave companies, they don't leave them because they're not competent. They leave them because they don't want to do the job, they don't want to show up, they got bad attitudes, or it's just not feeling a good fit. So this is back to an old analogy, the right people on the bus. This is okay for large corporations. Ron and I have talked about this. One of the issues with getting the right people on the bus, which I believe is a very good thing to do, you need more than 4, 5, or 10 people because most of us are wearing multiple hats. So let's move on here. How will the hires work out? Why do they excel or fade? What will the new changes that you're bringing on have an effect on your staff? For example, working from home for a lot of people, some people have found it very beneficial. I would say that they're predominantly on the introverted side who like some alone time. A lot of people, generalization, who are extroverts and like some interaction are struggling. And how can we as a company, you as a company, withstand change? So what we're doing here is the answer that we would like to present to you is what they call predictable behavior. And this is called, we look at 5 basic individual traits: dominance, extroversion, patience, formality, precision, and objectivity. And so, for example, on the bus, the guy who's the driver going cross country overnight, ask yourself, do you want him to be creative and spontaneous? Or do you want him to be more of a stable, long-suffering individual who can put up with a lot of things and runs it by the book? We know that if that was a pilot of a big plane, we'd want him to be very by the book, rules conscious. However, the pilot of an F-16 or an F-35 strike fighter might have a few other traits than a commercial airline pilot. And so how do we pick those traits? So what behavior is needed? How do you know it? And by the way, how can you predict it? Because we'll tell you, PI will say, we can predict it in the 90% category. We can predict the behavior that you're getting, and we can also predict the behavior that you need. So with that being said, the behavioral assessment, well, I'm going to show you, we've 5 of us have taken those. They're very, very quick. It's really interesting to see how much data comes out of 6 to 10 minutes. There's no right or wrong answers because each of us have a different behavioral profile. And that means we're going to be ideally suited for a different line of work. And so we're going to look primarily at 4 of the 5: dominance, extroversion, patience, and formality. Formality thing is how well we conform to rules and structure. And then we're going to look at a few profiles in particular. The one you're looking at is a pretty classic profile. This is a sales leader, a CEO, extrovert CEO type leader profile. It is pretty well established that there's a red line down the middle, which is the norm, the median. And this person is pretty dominant, but also pretty extrovert. So people might be confused of whether he's friendly or dominant. And he's also, with his C factor here being all the way to the left, very fast paced, less patient. And then some degree of respect for rules, but is capable of moving off rules if it needs to be. Now, how does this all work? Well, you know, individuals take their profile, which is like the person on the bottom, but as a group, you kind of assess what the job should be. So you get a job fit. You assess the job. For example, an inside sales job working from a phone bank or working from an internet bank is a little different than somebody working out in the crowds, which we don't have today because of COVID, working out with people. Totally different, but the same type of job. How do we get a different fit for each of those? So you're going to see a team of people and you're going to see their profiles, and then they are going to map or align in terms of data. And I'm going to jump here pretty quick into looking at our data. And we're going to look at these quadrants. We're going to look at exploring, producing, stabilizing, and cultivating. Now, PI has gone out and along with many other entities and looked at what are the fundamentals of business development, business exploration, producing, stabilizing. And these, you can call them different things, but these are 4 quadrants of how a beginning organization leading into a mature organization needs to have skill and strength in these areas. So what you do is you agree on the fact that some of these things are needed, and now you map your people into it. And you see to what extent, for example, on the cultivating, they're cooperative, motivating, relaxed generalists, steady and dependable. By the way, out of the group that's on this call, not too many of us are in this category, as you'll see. Because we all want to go out and do something new. We're out there in Guadalajara, or we're out there in Indiana, or out there wherever we are, expending some new ideas and looking for new ways of doing things. However, the cultivating teamwork is very, very necessary for maintaining your business. Same thing for exploring. We're talking about innovation and agility. And we're talking about some of the skills here that are needed. Quickly adapt to change and thrive under pressure. Maybe impatient. So we're going to talk about that, the producing. Now, at the end of the day, if you don't have people who are steadily producing whatever it is you as a business are offering and creating or manufacturing, if you don't have people who really love to do this, it doesn't matter how well you're doing on the stabilizing the back end or the cultivating, you're not going to be in business long, because you absolutely do need to have production people, producers, and they need to be there day in and day out, self-starting, delivering results, analytical eyes quite often to make sure they're doing the right thing. So here we are. The last one is stabilizing, and I say the last one, and unfortunately it's not something I'm particularly strong in, but we do have people in my little organization who are good at it, much better than me, and I've got to learn to hold them up high, because without that we would be a little bit awash. So there's the 4 segments, and then what PI does is they put names and labels around these segments. Now it's interesting. The cultivating labels are collaborator and promoter, and then you've got an exploring, you've got persuader, you got captains, maverick and venturer. The names actually are pretty typical, and they conjure up who those people are. And the stabilizing, you've got operators, craftsmen, guardians, and specialists. So that's how we look at. There's actually 17 different types that PI has, and you'll notice there's 3 at the bottom, and they're not in any particular group. And these guys sometimes are disappointed that they're not in one of these strong groups, But the truth of it is, these quite often people can be the glue that holds any organization. Individualist, altruist, and an adapter. So in my tight circle of friends, I got somebody who's very much the adapter, and phenomenal person to have around, because when things go a little awry, there are people who can come in and adapt to and be part of, and they can lean into any one of the 4 segments. All right, so there is, to some extent, in this group of people, which you'll see, there is some cross-pollination. Now, there's red arrows going on in this particular slide, and that's because an explorer does not do very well at stabilizing. Explorer can produce, an explorer can cultivate, but the opposites find it very difficult. So what you find here is, if you have a couple of groups, if you've got an exploring group and a strong producing group, and you really need some cultivating work, you're not going to ask the producers to do it. Frankly, they're not going to be that interested. The explorers could say, well, let's see how we can do that, and let's try to go and do that better. That'd be interested in doing it. They wouldn't want to do it long term, but they could certainly lean into it and help. It's a key thing to know when you're putting together your teams, where your team sits. Now, I'm going to jump out of this slide, and I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to go live to our own data. So bear with me here, because we're going to go to our live data. If I can do that, which I think I can. Back to okay, going to share this. Okay, we're now directly in side PI. So I can go down to, this is live data that's coming up, and I'm going to go and indicate for you, this is these groups that we're talking about. And as I'm clicking around, let's see what it would take. Let's add and remove people. Now, I've got a group of people. It just happens to be called MicroGiants. So let's populate all you guys in there. Okay, now, are you able to see this slide? Yes. So I'm going to say this is an overall look. Now, if you just took a quick span of this, I think you'd agree we're a little heavy in the top right quadrant. And there's a good reason for that. I'm going to talk about communicating, and you'll see 2 JMs there. And the reason I put JM and JM in there, I wanted you to see that I tried to fool around with this particular profile I did yesterday, and I just was off the cuff, and I just kind of moved things around. And look how close it is to the other JM that was in there. This is me of about a year ago. When we go in here, this is about communicating how you respect and connect with people. And you've got a couple of people who are really doing extremely well in this area. Ray Anderson, for example, who's not with us, is very respectful and really wants to connect well. Now, over here, we've got Matthew, and Matthew has some other skills. But Matthew, you can connect and you can respect, but you're actually naturally good at persuading and telling. So you probably want the mic right now, and you can tell us why that is. And I get it. Then, of course, we've got DM, which is who? Who we got is David Montan, and you're in persuading and connecting. And so that's interesting. You say, well, so what? Let's move on. Taking action. Where are we at in making decisions and taking action? Well, it's interesting. A whole bunch of people are in this taking action edge of the network. Decision making. Well, you've got aligning people, you've got justifying the reasons you're doing it, you've got bottom lining, here's what the results are going to be, and you've got conforming. And so individually, we've got this pretty strong group down here. Now, if we want to go on and have a look at a few other things, we can go to team alignment. Wonderful. And now here, I'm going to suggest to you, I need a little bit of interaction. I'm going to pull up some alignment, some objectives for this team. Now, guys, if you could come off mute and just say, let's go down here. I'm going to click some of these. We've got 4 groups. Cultivating, Which one of these four? Is there any of these that you want to, in the group that we're dealing with right now, really push? Listen to and serve others with empathy. Is that big? Guide others. Address and resolve conflict. Provide help. Provide service and support. Any of those that you feel are important? Don't hear anything. Let's go on to exploring.
Second one.
I'm having trouble seeing the little teeny part of the text there.
Okay, all right, very good. All right, that's fair. I'll read them out and you tell me if you want them. I'll start from cultivating. Provide service and support to people outside of the team. Next one, just say yes or no. Next one, provide help that allows others. Yes, you want that? Okay. Provide help that allows others to resolve issues.
Yeah.
Okay. Listen to and serve others with empathy. Guide others to improve collaboration. Address
Yes.
Address and resolve conflict.
Yes.
Okay, good. We're going to go into the exploring. Persuade customers or stakeholders to change their opinions or behaviors. Okay. Make the organization and its offering more visible and appealing.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Explore risky activities that could be rewarding.
Yes.
Ed wants that. Ed wants that one for sure.
Sell the company's products or services to customers.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Demonstrate that the organization and its products are uniquely valuable.
Yes.
All right, good. Now we're going to go on to stabilizing. Maintain detailed records of accomplishments, discoveries, and processes. Execute plans and monitor outcomes.
Ed wants that one too.
Okay. All right.
Since Ed's not talking, I'm going to put him in.
Okay, that's fine. Check systems, processes, and work activities for issues or errors. Develop systems that organize tools and resources.
Yeah.
Repair broken items, equipment, systems, or processes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Now we go to producing.
Yes.
Decide tactics and take action to outperform competitors.
Yes.
Make evaluations that lead to useful recommendations.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Consider data to inform actions and take next steps.
Yes.
Yes.
Develop strategies to increase market presence.
Yeah.
Plan projects that can be measured, tracked, and shared.
Yes.
Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to add team members. And guess who we're going to add? We're going to add the same team. And here we add the same team. And we're going to go over this and have a look. Okay, in cultivating, we've got a good fit. We've got some people who want to cultivate and some people who want to do it. In exploring, let's do it this way. It's even better. Here's what's nice. Cultivating. We can look at the key cultivators. David Montano, Matthew Lessig. Matthew, how do you say your last name?
No, you said it right.
Okay. You guys are strong in the cultivating, helping get it going. The rest of us are a little weak on it. Whoever Lee Burgess is pretty weak. Exploring. We've got a bunch of explorers here. In fact, I would say we have an explorer-heavy group of people. We got a bunch of people who want to go explore risky activities that could be rewarding, sell the company's products, demonstrate the organization. We're pretty heavy here. Stabilizing, not so much. Matthew is the lead person in this area, and Ron is number 2. These are the guys who want to make sure that we are in compliance, we have efficiency, and we want to develop systems. Everybody else is kind of like, let's get the job done and let's get it in the bank, and we'll figure that out later. And I'm speaking for myself there. And then we talk to producing, and our producing is not quite as strong as our exploring. We've got a bunch of people who really want to look at what they're going to do, but not necessarily keep on doing it. Ron is actually a producer. He wants to produce the product and keep it going. The rest of us are kind of on this track of, we like it, but we really like exploring more. So There's
And
one part.
execution has always been one of the issues that a lot of smaller clients I've had over the years has had. You can go get the business, but can you produce it and maintain the customers?
Yep,
So
exactly.
I don't like that part, but I've seen that that's the part that creates success.
So we're going to take a slightly different look here. And this is a look of the way we are. And if you have a look at the way we are, and we can go to an individual view, which I can see very well and I can print for you or not. But you'll see that we're looking at dominance right now. We've got a bunch of people who are dominant, who want our own way nicely. And we all do like working with people, but we're going to be pretty strong about where we're going to go. Extroversion, there's a whole bunch of extroverts out here. Mr. Ron Burgess is the least extrovert of all of us. And that kind of makes sense, Ron, because you're a bit of a researcher and you're quite prepared to be broken off from the herd and go do your own thing.
Yep.
And it's
I like to do that. I've had to learn to be more social.
Right. Now we talk about patience. And wow, look at this. Situationally in the middle, down here, we've got David. And David, you're in a unique position because you can choose to be patient or not patient depending on the circumstance. But most of us are relatively, we want to get on and get something done. And then Matthew, you are very patient. So we actually need you in the team. Something we learn is we need the people who are not like us in the team. Otherwise, you end up with a lopsided team that doesn't take into account some very good lessons. In terms of formality, and this would be easily put as rule obeying, rule respecting. Some of us are extremely not rule expecting. I mean, coming down here, the team as a whole is basically not particularly rule following. We like rules, we'll honor rules, we'll give to Caesar what's due Caesar, but at the same time, we will weigh them and figure out what we can do that needs to be done. And if the means is worthy of the end, then maybe we'll bend the rules a little bit. Of course, Ron is over on one end here where he's a little bit more, let's set it up, let's get the process going, let's adhere to the process. And I would probably say if the process is wrong, we can change it, but we're going to have to all agree before we do it. So when we look at this, it's really quite interesting how they actually work out and what the trend of view is. So this is one of the tools that we've got inside PI. And the PI tool is not necessarily as strong or as good as several other tools. What is good is this concept they've got of taking a business strategy assessment and designing the business strategy, plugging in your people, and then fine-tuning the strategy and adjusting the teams that you've got. And so we can create a new team here. We can set the strategy ourselves, or we can send surveys out to the entire team. So one of the benefits of the tool as such is that it addresses what they would call talent optimization, because we've moved from HR now to talent. This is talking about one of the 4 factors of success. It's about people. And so we've got to get the people, the talent in the right place, the right seat. And if you hire for behavior, my takeaway would be this: if we hire for behavior and then make sure the capabilities are there, then the people will stay a long time. If we hire for competency, quite often we completely overlook the behavior, and the people will actually end up parting out from our organization early. Now, we talked about the cost of hiring was high. Actually, it's not the cost of hiring that's high. It's the cost of hiring the wrong person that's high. If you hire the right person and they stay for 10 years and they perform well, it doesn't matter. They've done exactly what you want them to do, and whether you pay 10, 20, or 50,000 for them, that's a good fit. It's when you pay the 20,000 and after 3 months, that individual has gone and you've invested 3 months of your time, their time, and the team's time. And you've actually developed a strategy of failure in your hiring process. So that would be what I'd say is the real cost of hiring badly. Now we've got more slides to go, but I tell you what, based on the time, it's coming up to 1 o'clock. Ron, what do you think about having some questions and answers?
Sure, we have up until 1:30, so we
Oh,
do
okay.
have more time if you want.
Oh, okay. So we can flip through a few more slides, which would be very good. So let's do that, because that's the rest of the team here. And I think that would be a good strategy to go through. Okay. So we just went over and we were evaluating these alignment sectors. And it's hard to see in that kind of a pattern. It's a lot easier to see when we can live time, we can go and group them, and we can look at who's got the strengths in cultivating, who's got the strengths of exploring. And when you put together a team that's got a focus on a particular task, and you notice that we were all to one side, maybe that's not the team that you really want to have heading up your customer service and retention program. Maybe we need to add a couple of folks in. Same thing with exploring. As we go through, we look at how they relate. So each of these 4 sectors real time relate to the actual people that you have in your team. And in the system of PI, you can look at them, you can map them, you can assess them on the fly. And if you have a look, there's basically 4 levels: strong, moderate, low, and none. And so are there more than that? Yes, there are, obviously. We are very complex people, and it would be impossible to say that we break our entire population to 17 types of people with 4 or 5 behavioral emphasis. But these boxes are pretty darn good nonetheless. So this resilient guide we can send to you. In leadership, what we're trying to do is normal behavior, crisis behavior, and we're trying to go and have some tips that would help some increased resilience. So I flipped through this pretty quick, and it is the art and the science of who, the science and the art of who. And so we're talking about leadership, alignment, and productivity. So let's talk. And our slogan is people first, results follow. Now, Ron would say, quote me if I'm wrong, marketing first, results follow.
No, I would say cash flow results.
Finance. But I'm proposing to you at the end of the day, people first and results follow is what's truly important.
Well, I think what you're referring to is that there's this Kaizen kind of thing that the Japanese do, and there have been a lot of management folks that have talked about that and the Toyota way and so forth. And there's this tension between the idea that people are first and results follow, which let's see, the book that was written by is it Cosby? I'm missing the name right now. I'll think of it. But he's the guy that said, "Get all the people on the bus." And it's yes. And the problem with that for a small company is that you don't have that many people and you can't get everybody to get off the bus.
Very true.
But he says, get rid of the people. The way you do it, you want to be, ethical about that. But get rid of the people who are not on the bus. You got to be.
I would counter you on that and say, I agree with him in essence. Get them off that particular task. Yeah. But if you have somebody who is a really out-of-the-box thinker and very creative and can build bridges between people very rapidly, and you've hired them as a CFO because they happen to have a degree in finance and they're good at it, but they're not really doing that job well for fundamental reasons. It's not in their DNA, even though they can. What about reapplying that individual into an area of the business where their natural skills can be completely honed? I actually argue that this goes back to Genesis, that we are made in the image of God and he gave us gifts. And I would actually say that it's our job to help, my job to help Ron utilize his gifts, Ron's job to help me utilize my gifts. And when we go down the list, Ed, same thing for you. How do we utilize your gifts and help you do that well? Matthew, the same thing, and David, the same thing. If we
Yeah,
can,
no, I actually do agree with that completely. I was really talking about getting everybody off the bus. I don't think, in my experience with small business people, that that's very practical. And the reason is that a large group of people have their family members in their business, and the reason they have the business is for their family, and they don't want to get rid of everybody in the family. And so, in that case, you want to do the best you can, and utilizing the PI tools helps the best you can to try and get the people in the as close to the right seat on the bus as they should be in.
right. So I've done this with a couple
Yeah.
of families who have had, one was an $8 or $9 million business, and 4 family members who became managers because they were family members.
Right.
And no other reason, and they were making 6 figures each because they were family members.
Right.
When we did the analysis of how the business was performing, it became very clear that a couple of these people would have been better off to have done no work at all, received their full paycheck, and just been told to stay away.
Right.
Because the
Yeah.
position they were occupying and they were doing badly was costing the company so much money by not having the right person there. So give the guy
Exactly right.
100,000, just tell him not to show up.
Exactly right. They actually hurt the business in several ways. One is exactly in that way. The other one is there's huge amount of resentment among employees. If you have a company of any size, employees highly resent people who are within the family that are not performing at the level that everybody else is expected to perform in their jobs.
It's exactly right.
So then on the other hand, if somebody happens to be a really, really good CNC guy, and he's so good at it that he ought to stay doing that, but he happens to own the company. So what does he do? He hires 15 more because his business gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and they're making all of this, machinery and so forth. And he's the best CNC guy. Then he ends up being the president. It's a full-time job when he's got a bunch of people, but he's a lousy president because he's really much better at some of the things that you pointed out, like persistence and accuracy and attention to detail. And he has the personality to be a really, really good CNC guy, but he's not got the personality to be able to deal with the people and to do the conciliation and maybe know about finance. He's the wrong guy to have as president. So this is a major problem among families that's existed forever, and trying to utilize these tools for family dynamics is a super thing to do.
It's a super good thing to do, but
Yeah.
it's extremely, extremely difficult because
It is difficult.
people don't want to really open up and let each other know truly who they are. We are intrinsically a little afraid of letting somebody know the fullness of who we are. And it's not until we can actually work together in full knowledge that we actually perform well. Now, one of the best teams out there that is, and I've read several autobiographies and books on SEAL teams. And in fact, we had a tenant in our building who was in SEAL Team 7, did 2 tours, and I got to know him pretty well. And SEAL teams are really unique because they pass leadership in the middle of an operation. Leadership can pass from one person to another based on the position and the environment that the group is in. It's really quite fascinating because you do have a team leader, but you also have a navigator, a comms guy, you have a sniper, you have explosive experts. These guys, they don't debate and fight about who's in charge. They pass the mantle like a well-oiled machine. And to some extent, they can only do that if they know each other's strengths, but there is a degree of knowing each other's weaknesses. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think we as Western leaders, we don't want other people to know our weaknesses. And I would even say it's not really a weakness. It's not our strong suit.
That may be, yet there are those people who recognize that they don't like doing certain things, and they have in small business, and they end up gravitating to hiring people in. When you take a look at the composition of, say, this particular group, I think it's kind of exactly what I would expect, and yet it's fun and surprising to see it at the same time, and on paper, so to speak. This particular group, as we are today, I'm talking about the people who took the test, would probably make a pretty terrible company if there were 5 or 6 of us, because everybody wants to do the same thing, and we haven't got anybody that's going to stabilize the company. And so, and that is just so much the problem with beginning and starting businesses. It's just because this is the kinds of people who do this. It takes these gritty, individualistic kinds of independent people to be able to go out and start a business. But it takes the consistent, stable, organized, systematic people to maintain it and to be able to maintain quality in customers. Absolutely. So you have to learn to stop hiring the people that are like you. You've got to hire people that can do these kinds of jobs.
So we would argue, and I would argue, and we all know this, we end up hiring people because they're a friend of the family or they need a job. Hey, this guy needs a job and he's a good guy.
Right.
Well, that's a perfect reason to hire him, right?
Oh,
You don't even know whether he's capable or not, but he needs a job and he's a friend. No, those reasons are really terrible reasons. And at the end of the day, the next one we do is we hire for competency. The guy's got a PhD. He's got a master's degree. He must be good. Well, we can look around and find numerous people with no degrees who are actually more skilled at doing a lot of things than people who've got master's degrees. I'm not against masters or PhDs. They just do not automatically mean that that person has applicable knowledge in the area that you need it.
Well, in fact, in small business, we need generalists, and so the more highly educated a person is, the less able they are to do. And here's the reason. They have continually focused. They get a master's degree in a certain area. And then if they get a PhD, they're specializing in the most trivial, ridiculous, small universe that you can believe. And they get a PhD in a teeny weeny thing, like cellular something.
Unless that happens to be SARS viruses and you're hiring for COVID testing, which is a good thing, but it's very rare.
Well, but my point is that if you're looking for that degree of, but how many small businesses are at that level? Very, very few. And my point there is that literally PhD candidates have to pick a subject to write their dissertation, their thesis on, that's never been done before. That makes it so small and so narrow, nobody knows much about that subject except that person. So, in other words, a PhD can end up being extremely limiting to the vast majority of small businesses.
So let's go back and jump into this hiring process again. So what PI has done is they have enabled you as a company, if you have a position that is somewhat predictable, an inside sales production, an outside sales, or a manufacturing position where you're going to be for a long time doing manual dexterous things, there are ways and means of assessing candidates who are naturally going to behave and enjoy doing that.
Right, absolutely.
And so
right.
You're going to be able to get somebody in the 70 percentile who actually likes to sit down with a machine, get it fine-tuned and operate, and feels a sense of joy having that machine run well. Well, if you're in the CNC business, plastics press business, that's great. So that's one part of it. There's another section that they have, which is a cognitive assessment. Now, some of you guys took the cognitive assessment, and I intentionally do not share the cognitive assessment, except with individuals who request it. And the reason is it's kind of an interesting thing. This is a speed of processing. And what it turns out is that if you're an air traffic controller at a very high volume base, you actually need to have some cognitive processing speed to be able to do that job well. You also need to be very, very by the rules, completely dedicated, and very, very faithful and predictable in the way you operate. Some of us who are a little bit, freer with our time might say, hey, I'm going to step out for a moment. Would you watch my computer while I'm gone? I'll be right back. Well, that's not going to happen for the right candidate. But cognitive assessment is important. Now, I've tested a lot of, or assessed a lot of people with the cognitive assessment, and some of the people who I thought would have higher cognitive assessment have actually had lower cognitive assessment. But it turns out they don't need to be super fast about how they process. They are very dedicated, very determined, they do the research and all of that. Their speed process is actually not important to them. They don't really value making fast decisions. So it doesn't come out that way. So
On the other hand, a company that has a lot going on and has people who are competent are very frustrated with, say, a president or a vice president who cannot keep up.
exactly.
It's okay to think on strategic issues very carefully, look at where you're going, what you're going to do, that kind of thing. But a gentleman who I worked for many years, who in this business and kind of introduced me to the 16 PF. He had seen some studies done on how many decisions a president has to make every day, and it's in the nature of 40 or 50 decisions an hour. Well, you know, if you have to really think about things for a while, this may not be the right place for you, because you have to be able to understand the background, understand the circumstances and any references that come up, take in some brand new information, and then make a decision right away on probably 80% of the things that come over the desk. And if you can't do that fast enough, you will eventually slow your company down. Now, there is a way to mitigate that, and that's through really, really superior organization and systems. If you have built an organization that is very systematic and it's been well structured, you may not be able to respond rapidly to market changes, but you'll be able to take a little bit more time in order to be able to make decisions, because the vast majority of decisions have been made by the process or the system. And I want to kind of back up just a minute. The Toyota way, the Toyota people say, we would rather have superior systems and average people. We get more productivity out of them than hiring strong, superior people who are trying to make their own decisions. So now Toyota has had a little problem over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, but for the most part, they built their business on the attitude that systems are the way you manufacture things and the way you maintain quality and new styling and so forth. Why? You can, if you're hiring a lot of people, you can't find the best people all the time. You have to hire average people. And those average people have to be trainable to do it the way they want it done. So that's the one side. Now, little businesses can't do that. You know, it's hard to really be totally systemized on everything that a small business has to do. It takes a lot of time and effort to be able to build systems to be able to do those things. And so you have to have people who can think on their feet and can handle these decisions fairly quickly. And boy, if you have a small business and you can get people who both like to do repetitive work that are going to maintain the business, but can also think on their feet a little bit and handle the exceptions, then you're going to have a group of people that can really make a small business grow. And keep in mind, you'll grow out of, if your business grows, you may grow out of your people too.
Well,
this people may not keep up with your business.
So Ron, this is, you know, back in the Midwest, we were in electronics. We did a lot of business with IBM. And just when color printers were coming out, we actually helped them with the IBM 4079. I remember the name because I saw I had bought one of them. It was a $2,400 4-color printer back in 1982. And we had the chipset. It was an AMD chipset that was in it. So it was really a big deal. But part of that was developed by a skunk works. So IBM was very staid and very conservative in 90% of its business practices. exactly as you described.
Right.
And then they had a group of people, well, they had two groups. One was the Skunk Works, and they were doing stuff that nobody would even dream about. And
In
then,
IBM, yeah, right.
yeah, and IBM. And then they also had their fellows. And I can't remember how you qualified to become an IBM fellow, but it was like you'd been in the business for 15 years and you're a senior researcher. They gave you a year off to travel anywhere in the world and to do anything and to research anything you wanted. And if you're an IBM fellow, you could travel the world in the pursuit of whatever it was that fired you up.
Cool
And these,
job, huh?
right, it was phenomenal. And these guys were the guys that actually helped IBM not die and still grow.
Yeah.
You know, maybe not as successful as they should have been, but they're still quite a force. But
Yeah.
then Skunk Works was exactly that. It was a group of people who could pivot, back to the word earlier in the slide. It wasn't continuing to redevelop what we've done, but you know, we all are faced with new fronts. Toyota, believe it or not, Toyota, you got some problems coming at you, whether it's hydrogen or electric or whether it's solar powered, who knows? But somebody at the company had better learn how to pivot, and I think you are, in a small way.
Well, yeah, you're right, and we can look at a lot of examples, you know, where they've managed to get through this. You know, if you think of the team that put together the first Macintosh, I mean, you know, if you opened up, and I remember doing it, you open up your Macintosh and you look on the inside, you saw the signatures embossed on the inside of the case of everybody who was involved. There weren't more than 15 or 20 signatures in there because that's how small the team was that developed perhaps one of the most pivotal electronic and communication devices ever invented. I mean, on the scale of electricity or steam power or something like that. That was a really, really big deal, huge multiple advancements at one time. But then for them to be able to pivot and get into manufacturing, which requires precision and the same thing over and over and, you know, high quality, that's pretty impressive. And Apple has been able to do that over and over and over and over again. And they must continue to do these skunkwork kinds of things on one hand, and then have, you know, the stabilizing folks on the other hand do all of production. So it's an interesting thing in technical development. And in a very small way, small business is kind of the same. And as a matter of fact, I mean, you know, almost all of these businesses were small at one time. I mean, when it was Steve Jobs and Wozniak, who just two guys who developed the first computer, Apple II, which was the first constructed one. The first one was just a kit. And it was two guys, and then they would just rely on a couple of other people maybe to ask questions, and they got together with their computer club. They had their own skunk works. That's the thing that small businesses have to guard against, is they've got, and the vast majority of them who have ideas are not able to, number one, capture a market to keep them in business, and number two, they're not able to stabilize their business and find those really strong, consistent people that will make it happen day after day after day.
So this is about a board of directors or de facto group. One of the problems I had in my early life was, I was pretty dominant and I thought I knew what I was doing, and probably was half right. The problem was I didn't have a lot of other peers that I could lean into who could help me down the road. I now do. There's a group of people that I could talk to, say, look, here's what I'm thinking. What do you think? And I think this is one of the very necessary parts of what MicroGiants is about, is how do we share each other's ideas? How do we actually breathe into each other's business opportunities to some extent, look down the road and make sure that some of the obvious ditches and hazards are taken care of, and at the same time to give encouragement. This is free market, yes, but I think this is really what we want to do. And if you can then bring a team of people who you know what their core behavior is, and it is predictable, then you can go out and talk to these guys. I already know in my team, there's several people who have a completely different opinion on what should be done. I know that, but I'll go and ask them to what extent do they think and how do they feel about it, just to get that input. because maybe they're more right than I am in this. So let's consider it.
Yeah, and that's a wise policy, because we don't all fit all of those areas that you demonstrated, and we tend to have, and we tend to have this entrepreneurial kind of bent in MicroGiants, and so it's really important to get that pushback from other people. So I'm kind of interested if there's any other. We've got about 7 or 8, 10 minutes left. Interested if you've got comments or questions for John and the rest of you guys.
No questions, just I can comment on that that test. That was pretty interesting, because all of this kind of relates to what Edgar and I are going through as partners, and trying to establish roles, talents. And they didn't, even though I've known him for probably 10 years now, we've known each other and we've talked about business. Those talents and those strengths didn't always, they weren't open right up front. So we had to kind of learn that from each other as clients started to come in, challenges started to come in, and then we had roles and tasks that needed to be accounted for. We started to kind of isolate, okay, well, Edgar, this is better suited for you. And ironically, looking at the result of that test as far as cultivating relationships from outside, that kind of spot on from the role that I've, kind of taken on with some of the partnerships that we're laying out. So I enjoyed that test, and I wish Edgar would have had taken it so we could see where he falls on in that map. But yeah, it's a relationship. We're still learning to try to figure out how we can cover more ground without having to be assigned the same tasks or have too many chefs in the kitchen, so to speak.
Yeah.
Can I throw David? Can I throw your basic pattern up on the screen and take a quick look at it? Are you open to that?
What was that?
Can I display your pattern, your basic pattern, for the group to look at?
Profile.
Display it?
Yeah, share it. Can I share your?
So my personal. That's
okay.
A good question.
Well,
I would.
I won't. That's okay.
Yeah, I've never had that question asked me to be profiling myself, so
Yeah. Well, I'll show.
Well,
I'll tell you what. Maybe I'll show you mine. That'll be easier. How about that?
Yeah, I didn't know what you were really insinuating, but.
No, it's not at all. It's okay. It's just fascinating. I love to do these because what ends up happening is you can find it so easy to talk about somebody very easily without any. Yeah, I'll show you mine. And so once you get to know the pattern.
Yeah, you can share mine. I didn't know that's what you meant.
Oh, okay.
Go for it. Yeah,
all right. So I could. For me, I'm very independent and self-driven, which, I ended up coming over from New Zealand and being here. Pretty sociable, as you know, but here's this driving part. And this is this ability to drive very fast. Now, my wife and I are polar opposites. She's very steady, precise, slow. So here's this, I'm over here and I'm wanting to drive, and she's over here wanting to stay still and be. So this is a huge area of conflict in our marriage that we have now resolved. So the reason I bring it up is that when you go in and you start looking at yourself and somebody else who you're in business with, it's eye-opening to see this is how other people see you, and to some extent, this is the way you are. And then you've got those patterns that you are. So intense, restless, needs a lot of variety, opportunities to work at a faster than average. I am so bored managing something. Hate to do it. So for you, it's interesting, because now you look at your behavior and you look at the work to be done and you say, okay, I can do this for a while, but long term, I don't want to do this. I want to do something else. That's okay.
When you're not matched to a task, it's like, and this is what Rich Trafton used to say, it's like holding your arms out straight.
Oh.
We can all do it. but not forever. And so, you know, John can do a lot of things. I mean, he's a talented and wide breadth, but he's right. You ask him to do the same thing over and over, because of the repetitive nature of that, he eventually is going to get bored and then starts making mistakes. And so, as a result, he's really not the right person to be able to be, say, maybe an accountant or someone on a production line, because he's going to make mistakes. I remember that I had a repetitive job in a factory once when I was in high school, and I mean, they were 12-hour shifts, and I thought I had been there for a month at the end of the day, and I could not make myself go back to that job because I was so bored. I was literally going out of my mind, and I could not go back to the job. I knew then that I had to have something that was a lot more interesting in my life. And as a matter of fact, I built my own business to my own specifications because I knew that I couldn't continue to do repetitive tasks in business. So that was my solution.
David, a real quick overview. And Edgar, this is your partner, David, in business, right? So what's interesting about David is he's almost the same as me in the sense I'm a little bit more dominant than you are, David, which means I have to exert myself a little bit more, as I'm doing with Ron right now. But you've got this amazing gift of being midline, which means you can be dominant if you want to be, or you could be listening. You can be glue. People who are on the midline quite often are really, really valuable because you can be glue in a relationship. I showed you the video of Mike Zani. You could look him up. He and his partner in business are really opposites. Zani did the video. Guess what? He's the extrovert. The guy that his back-end operations guy is a bit of an introvert, but he is extremely detailed. Zani's not so detailed. So here you are, you're extremely sociable, you meet and greet new people. You're not impossibly high-speed driven, but you are driven. You are definitely driven. And you're also open to change. This D down here means that you will bend the rules more than a lot of people, which probably means your partner would like to have rules a little bit more in what you're doing. And you're like, well, you know, we could change those. It's just, without seeing Edgar's, I'm going to suggest that's probably true.
Yeah,
So,
it is.
and so if you know that about yourself, and then you know that about your team, you can put yourself into the team dynamics that obviously you love to meet and greet and do people, and you will create an opportunity. Why? When you meet people, you want them to be satisfied. You want them to be able to do business, and you'll even customize the package to make it happen. And I know that about you just by looking at your profile. I don't know how competent you are with any one of the tools that you need, but I know what you're going to be like when you're at work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense, and it's kind of spot on.
So Edgar, go take the assessment, and then I can actually, with both of you privately, I can go through the dynamics of where you guys really work well together, but I can also very easily say this is an area where you'll have to come to agreement with each other on.
And you know, Matt, I might suggest that you get Andrew to do it and take a look at it too, as you kind of partner up for for your coffee shop.
And in general, we do not share these with other people. It's not something that we do. And so we just share them with yourself and whoever you would like to share them with, because they are private pieces of data.
Well, that was terrific. Any other last comments before we wrap up?
I do. I just want to kind of add to everything. I've been struggling with the signal. That's why I kind of want to walk around and find the best signal. But I heard probably 98% of the conversation when it comes down to personalities. And I think one of the hardest things has been trying to understand what my strengths are, because I've been trying to, it almost feels like just because I know how to do something, I don't think I should be doing it. And I don't know how to distinguish what should I be doing sometimes. And I think that's one of those things that I'm like, I don't know. I think I know what the personality I might have, but I need some guidance to guide me, like kind of like what you were talking today, to see who really is it that I am when it comes down to fully understanding my strengths. And I think that quitting the bank, it gave me the humble me down and say, yeah, maybe you don't know who you really are. You need to understand where your strengths are. And so I've been kind of trying to finding that self-identity I've been looking for to find out really where my biggest strengths might be, because I kind of want to know, and I guess need to know.
So Edgar, one of the things that people who are competent in several things, they don't know how competent they are, and quite often they're more competent than they realize. And then you can do a lot of things, and some of those things, as you said, aren't necessarily really joyful long-term. Doesn't mean to say you shouldn't do them, but it is really nice to see what you're built for. And I'd say that was what the true design, and I actually go back to Genesis. I think it's a God-given design that even though we can make bricks and build houses with bricks, we're competent at doing that. Maybe we really want to be an architect, you know. And so I would argue for all of us, we can do many things, but what is it that really brings us joy and that we are good at as well? And that would be really, let's build a team around that.
I'm looking. I want to apologize not taking a test. The trip kind of put me up on against a situation that I didn't get to a computer on time. But look, take that thing as quick as possible, and I'd love to see how me and David are.
Right, and if you want to go, if either any of you have got a spouse that you'd like to, I won't share any of that information, but I'd love to give you a comparison of you and your spouse. I'll just mail it to you so you can see. And I can just say, you know, with my wife and I, we are literally polar opposites in every factor. And when we go through it, it's like, well, we struggled with this for 10 years. And we've now kind of come to grips with this. And this is how we work. And now I know how to work with Lisa, and she knows how to work with me, and it works really well. But boy, it took a long time.
Very good.
I will greatly appreciate that too.
Yeah, that sounds great. Hope you have an opportunity to do that, Edgar, and that would be really a good thing for you to do. So I think we're there. John, thank you very much. I see that you've got a superhero on behind you right now. So I guess that's a good thing. You know, you probably don't have to tell most of us in this group to go do it, but because that's kind of, we're doers here. So very good and insightful information. Let me just kind of say again, a lot of this stuff is cutting edge. Some of the principles have been known and understood for many years, but it's not done very often in small businesses. And as a result, small businesses make more mistakes. It's a tool that is really useful when you get a business up into several employees. And it's a tool, you know, while you're forming a business, that's really great to look at for partnerships and even long-term vendors that you might be interested in. So I'd suggest that you do that. John's, I'm not sure that we've got John's information handy, but we'll make sure and make that available to everybody so that you can be in touch with him. And we will say goodbye until 2 weeks from now, when we'll all get together again. And John, since you've got the control of this meeting, be sure to, if you don't mind, be sure to save that video for us.
Okay.
All right, great. Thank you all. We will see you in a couple weeks.